Welcome back to another episode of the Canon on the Boomer Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today we're going to talk about some movie news. Before we get started, just want to remind you, if you want to send in a voice message, a question, a comment, whatever you want me to talk about, something, a suggestion, use the link below or in the description section to leave a little voice message. You can use your phone or your laptop or whatever device. And if it is not too crazy, I'll put it on the next episode. Also, if you like the content, consider supporting by going to the Patreon. All right, so now let's get into it. Number one, Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is in talks to return as Bruce Wayne, Batman in the DC movies. So this is what I would probably call a scheduled leak, where you got a number of places in the big ones, Hollywood Reporter, The Wrap. They're all reporting that they receive news, but everybody says they has their own source. So it's not a case of we're reporting that somebody else is reporting that this is happening. No, everyone's like, we got exclusive news from our source. So usually when that happens, in my opinion, that's a scheduled leak. That's when they kind of feed it out to the media. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if you don't know, I didn't know this until recently, DC is having a virtual kind of Comic-Con, and I believe it's in July, maybe August, but it's called DC Fandom, and they will be releasing a lot of information on that day. So as we start to hear leaks and rumors and all that, we should be looking for it that day to get some solid information. So back to Keaton. This kind of comes right after we got rumors about Jeffrey Dean Morgan being Thomas Wayne in Flashpoint movie. Now, obviously, that's the story arc, if you watched it, that Bruce Wayne's dad is alive instead of Bruce. And also, Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Bruce Wayne's dad in BVS in the opening little scene. So that kind of makes sense. Now, originally, Michael Keaton's rumors were that he's in talks to be in the Flashpoint movie as Bruce Wayne. So that already, as for me at least, that kind of, I was like, okay, so this isn't traditional Flashpoint. Obviously, they're going to adapt things, but I'm like, this isn't traditional Flashpoint because Bruce Wayne, as I mentioned, is dead. Now, two things in my mind. One, they could, or three things really. One, I thought they could just be replacing Thomas Wayne with Bruce Wayne, because Jeffrey Dean Morgan, that was very light rumors. No big trade was reporting that. So I'm like, maybe they are going to have Michael Keaton replace Thomas Wayne instead of having it where Bruce died. They leave it regular. It's just a different version of Bruce Wayne. Or two, they could have them both in there and they're adding to the storyline and, switching it up a bit. And then three, which is now seeming more and more, they might just be using different timelines. So as the bigger people came out with their reports, they got a little more information. It is being said that this movie will tie in all DC movies, quote unquote. So whatever that means, we don't know how far that goes back. Obviously, you're bringing in Michael Keaton. Now, they said they don't know if it's the same Batman, but it really seems as if this is going to be the Batman from Tim Burton, and it's picking up off where Batman Returns left. And so if we go that route, then that'll be bringing that in. But the problem is you got all this other stuff. The Joker, the Oscar-winning beloved movie. Are you going to tie that in? Obviously, you got Robert Pattinson's The Batman, and Hollywood Reporter said that this movie won't affect that movie, at least the story. So we don't know if it's going to be a glimpse, or we don't know what this is. I mean, we've said for a long time, most fans, that the key, if you wanted to jump around, was the Flash between CW TV shows, between the DC Universe TV shows, between the movies, the different timelines. The way you could do it is through the Flash, because he can go through the multiverse. And obviously we seen that come to fruition on the CW show with Crisis on Infinite Earths, and we even saw Ezra Miller's Flash in there, which was a last second addition. And so it's very possible they could be doing this. Now further reports have come out that some people are calling it a Nick Fury type role because he's going to be signed on for multiple movies. Now, I don't know what that really means as Nick Fury. I mean, Nick Fury, they said a mentor role. So I think when people hear Nick Fury, they automatically think of assembling the team. But that was what he did at first. But after that, he was just kind of around. And I think that's more so what they mean. But let me tell you what I thought. My initial thoughts when I heard this was that they're going to use Michael Keaton's Batman as a way to replace Ben Affleck's Batman by setting up some younger version to take over. And I will not lie to you. I literally said this to somebody, and Batman Beyond never even came to my mind once. I was just like, they're going to probably have Ben Affleck's either die off screen or maybe get him back for a quick little thing. He's going to die. Or let me reverse. I said I'm starting to think there's a dark horse chance that the Snyder Cut is going to springboard, if it goes well, back into the Snyder's version of the DCU. And I think that starts with they probably have to kill Batman off screen or something, because he originally doesn't die in Snyder's vision. But I think Ben Affleck's not coming back. So I think you might kill him off screen, and then you use Michael Keaton in Flashpoint to kind of replace that. And they're like, oh, it's another Batman. We lost our Batman. We thought he was gone. And it's like, oh, he's here, but I'm old. We need to find somebody to take my place. And literally, I didn't even think of Batman Beyond. I saw somebody else say that later, and I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, that makes sense. So now I think that does fit, because multiple movies for Michael Keaton. You introduce him. Maybe you introduce Terry. I don't think they're already working together, but maybe they are. You introduce them, and then that spins off into a Batman Beyond movie. And then once that Batman is established, he takes over for Batman in the Justice League. That's at least what I'm thinking. I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know, because Henry Cavill's coming back. Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa aren't going anywhere. You still got Ezra Miller, not only after all these failed movies, but after the man was on video choking a woman. And so you sticking with him, you must have big plans. And so the only one that really isn't coming back is Ben Affleck. So I just don't see why wouldn't you. Now, I would love a reset, but at this point, you might as well, with the fever for the Snyder cut, with all that, I mean, you might as well just go forward. So I'm thinking that's possibly what's going to happen. But we'll have to see. We're still getting more information, but it seems like it's a very real possibility that Keaton will return. And I think it's interesting. I think it's super interesting that he wants to do this. And I'm curious at how all of this is going to come together. So really hoping for some good information at DC Fandom. All right. So next bit of news, we got Christopher Nolan. So this this didn't happen just now. This happened a little bit ago, but I was talking about this a little bit ago. So basically, on another channel that I am a supporter of, we were talking in a Q&A, and I was basically asking, this is a question I've had for a long time, because it applies through movies and everything else. But my question was about precedence and setting that precedence. I mean, because we all see it, like in sports or anything, when you set that precedence, now it changes the norm. And so one thing you think about is inclusion riders, and everybody's talking about that now. But obviously it started with somebody that was powerful enough to ask for it. And now it's like when the next hot person comes up, it's like, hey, they got it, I want it too. And so it's the same thing like in sports. You know, one quarterback gets paid a lot. Now the next quarterback wants to get paid more. So it's like that. So my question on this Q&A basically was, what if a powerful star, a director or actor, whatever, asked for something ludicrous that we never saw before? And my example was they wanted final approval of the trailers. And I was like, so if they're a big enough star and a studio that wants them bad enough for a project agrees to it and sets that precedence, I'm like, how long before you think that becomes standard? Or do you think that it only can happen if you're top of the top and they're only going to reserve it for a handful of people? Or would eventually studios just freeze them out? I mean, if you are a smaller studio, or if you got a project that you didn't think you could land a big star for and they want to do it, but they said, hey, you got to let me approve the trailers, I feel like a smaller studio without position would say yes. But then the bigger studios, are they going to want to have to continue to let people do that? So that was my question. And then that kind of sped into this whole thing with Christopher Nolan, where it's a real life example. So apparently there was a report that basically the people at Warner Brothers wanted to continue to push back Tenet. And I believe Tenet went back a few weeks, but they wanted to push it further back, like into the fall, because they wanted to make sure that the theaters were operating and healthy when this movie came out. But they kept it where it is because Christopher Nolan wanted it in that area. And then on top of that, they reported that Christopher Nolan is getting 20% of the first dollar gross from this movie. So that means so basically we know when the movie comes out into the theaters and people buy the tickets, part of that money from the ticket sales goes back to the studios. Obviously, there's part where the studios get money for having their movies in that theater as well, or whatever the deal they set up. But you get the money from the ticket sales, and so that first dollar gross is basically the first money that comes through back to the studio. Because when you get the money from the studio, a lot of people got to get paid. Obviously, you got to pay the budgets, outstanding budgets, or whatever the debt you have or the debt you took out to make the movie. You got to pay for certain things. Everybody's get their cut. But that first dollar gross is what comes in first on that movie. And typically that's reserved for the studio because they have the investment, so they want to get the money. Usually what happens is you get an actor or director that takes back end points, which is basically like royalties. And so instead of getting paid a lot up front, they'll take points on the back end. So if the movie does well, then they get part of that money that comes in after that initial wave of money. And so it's very rare for anybody in the production crew to get that first gross money. And not only that, but he got 20%, almost a whole quarter of that movie's gross is coming to Christopher Nolan. Like, you think about how much money that is. And should I try to do math? I mean, because if it's $1 billion, isn't that 200 million he would get? I'm gonna sound silly, but that's a lot of money. That is a crazy amount of money. And so, that precedence is now set with Christopher Nolan. And there's a discussion with people about how powerful is he? Should he have that much power? Whatever. And I think this is my example come to life. Now, the question is, again, will studios justify and say, hey, only someone with Christopher Nolan's track record or someone's doing something like that could ever have that type of pull with us? Or do other studios freeze them out and say, yo, you're not getting that deal? You could get that with Warner Brothers, but you never getting that with us. You're just not going to make movies with us. Not that he has made movies with other people, but if he wanted to. Or does it just become commonplace slowly? Now, I don't think it'll be that much money because that's already a crazy amount. But if you're, let's say, who's a hot director right now? Like super hot. I mean, Jordan Peele was hot, but Us kind of fizzled a little bit. I don't know about the Parasite director because that's foreign language. I can't think right now, but let's just say you're a real hot director. Let's say you're the Russo brothers, and people really want you to do this movie, and you look at it, you say, man, Nolan got all that. We want 20% of the first dollar gross. And they say, whoa, we can't do that. That's just too much. Okay, give us 5% of the first dollar gross. And we want to be able to set the release date. And we want to have final say over the trailer. And so what do you do? And now Russo's might not be a great example. I'm trying to think of somebody that could command that type. But let's just say that slowly they might not get what Nolan's getting, but they're getting similar demands, just not as heavy. And so slowly first dollar gross is starting to be common in the contract. Maybe slowly, final trailer cut is starting to be common. And so I'm just curious of what this precedence means, because just like sports and anything else, just like at the job you work at, everybody counts everybody else's pockets. And so they're looking at this and saying, oh, he got that? Well, I'm at least as half as good as he is or whatever, then I should be getting that. So I should be getting something like that. And so that'll be an interesting question. All right, so last up is the Oscars. So if you haven't heard, the Oscars are looking to introduce a some diversity requirements. This comes in a long list of stuff. Not a long list, but a list of things they've changed. They've combined the two sound categories. It's no longer sound editing and sound mixing. It's just sound. I don't know how I feel about that. But they changed some other stuff, small things and tweaks. But one of the big things they mentioned that hasn't been fully revealed yet is that they're considering some diversity requirements in order for you to be considered to get an award. And initially there was a lot of backlash to that, and me included. I've said many times it's not their job, and other people said that it's not their job to do that. Like, every time I see these stupid articles and these stupid tweets, the Oscars had a chance to nominate a woman right there. That's not what this is about. First of all, the Oscars doesn't do anything. The Oscars is just a body of a lot of people. A lot of people vote, and that's what it ends up being. Now, if you want to claim they're rigging it, that's a whole nother thing. I don't know. But the way it's set up is everybody votes. And so the votes win. You don't just say, oh, it's not a person or two people that's like, well, let's give it to this person this year. That's not how it works. Everybody votes. And it's funny because you get so many people, like actors and whatever, that's talking crap and calling racism, but yet it's your colleagues that are voting. You are part of the the Screen Actors Guild. You're involved, part of the Directors Guild, the Producers Guild, whatever you do in Hollywood, you're part of one of those guilds, and you vote on the Oscars. So all your people around you are the ones picking the nominees and the winners. So don't come for the Oscars like they just did it. But anyway, there's a lot of call, Oscar so white, blah, blah, blah. And so people are just like, you need to do it. And again, it's not their job. It's their job to vote on what they see from that year. And to me, again, every year there's something, whether it's about race or not. There's movies where I'm like, dude, that shouldn't be nominated, or this should be nominated, or that person shouldn't have won, or that person shouldn't even be nominated. That's the nature of the beast. That's just how that goes. That's part of the fun. And people have turned this into just a serious political agenda. Whatever. So I don't think it's their job to make things diverse. Like a lot of people said, it should be up to Hollywood to give opportunity so that we have more diverse movies to pick from. With that being said, the idea of making it certain requirements of diversity to be in the Oscars, that was a very sour taste. But then there's some people that came out and said that they're looking at some guidelines that are similar to, I believe, the BAFTA Awards, which is the British one. And so they've had these guidelines for years, and this is kind of what Oscars might be looking to model after. And basically, it's kind of almost like when you do a background check or get a driver's license or something, where it's like you need to have a certain amount of forms of ID, and they can come from these 3 to 4 different categories. And so that's basically what it looks like. It's like there's a category for basically like the on-screen representation. So like the actual race identity or the actual identity of the people on screen, the story being told on screen, blah blah blah. There's a category for production, so the identity of the crew, the percentage of identity of the crew, representation, blah blah blah. And then there's some other stuff. So there's a number of different categories, and I don't know the exact system, and I don't know how the Oscars will do it, but basically it's kind of like that. You got to have at least 2 from these 4 categories, or you got to have 2 from category A and 1 from category B, C, or D, however. And so some people believe, looking at the way it's set up right now, and I would love to sit down. I might do this, go to the BAFTA's requirements, and then look at the last year's Oscar movies or award nominees, and I would like to see how many movies would qualify. But a lot of people in the industry have said that they believe those requirements just stand alone right now, that you would have the vast majority of movies in Hollywood would qualify, and it would only take a little bit of tweaking to make them qualify. And so, again, we don't know what the Oscars are going to do. They might make it stronger. They might make it a little weaker. But it seems like it's feasible. I think because it was brand new and we haven't heard of it, a lot of people freaked out of, worst case scenario. But looking at what the BAFTA has done, it seems like there's a plan and a structure in place, which makes people feel a little more comfortable. But at the end of the day, should there be one? I don't think so. As feasible as it might be, I don't think there's no point in even doing this besides PR. Because if, let's say, they were like, hey, we're going to put in some diversity requirements, or not even diversity, let's just say we're going to put in a new requirement for you to be Oscar eligible. And they said the requirement is you have to be able to see or hear the movie. And then that everybody qualifies then. But what was the point of you making that requirement? Just to look like you're doing something. And so I feel the same way about this. Like if they're like, hey, we got a set of requirements that would make 99% movies eligible already, then what's the point of doing it? You're just doing it to say that you're doing something. So that's how I feel about that. But we'll see what they end up coming out with. So that's it for me. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about Michael Keaton coming in as Batman, Christopher Nolan's power over at Warner Brothers, and the diversity requirement with the Oscars. Go to the comment section, get the conversation started, share it around, thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, if you heard it here, it's official canon.